You are anxious about time. Not in some abstract philosophical sense. Concretely, practically, daily, you feel the pressure of hours that disappear without producing what you intended. You feel the weight of obligations that multiply faster than you can address them. You feel sometimes the unsettling sense that the life you are actually living is not quite the life you meant to be living. That somewhere between intention and execution, something is getting lost. You are not the first person to feel this. 2,000 years ago, a man named Lucius Annaeus Seneca sat down and wrote a letter to his friend Lucilius. The letter began with a line that has lost none of its precision in the intervening centuries. Ita fac, mi Lucili, vindicate tibi. Do this, my Lucilius. Claim yourself for yourself. Not your time, yourself. Because Seneca understood that the problem of time is actually a problem of self. Of a person who has not yet decided to treat their own hours as genuinely precious, genuinely finite, genuinely theirs to govern. Seneca wrote 124 letters to Lucilius over the last years of his life. These letters are among the most practical documents in the history of philosophy. Not because they are simple, but because they are specific. They deal with actual problems. The problem of anxiety, the problem of distraction, the problem of other people's opinions governing your choices, the problem of time disappearing without your permission, the problem of fearing the wrong things and ignoring the right ones. The problems he was writing about are your problems, not similar problems, the same ones. Because the fundamental challenges of a human life navigating a demanding world have not changed in 2,000 years, only the specific forms they take have changed. What follows is what Seneca actually said about the problems you are actually dealing with, not a summary of his philosophy. The specific practical guidance he offered, translated from the language of ancient Rome into the language of the life you are living right now. Part 1. On time. The problem you think you have is not the problem you have. The first thing Seneca wanted Lucilius to understand, the thing he considered so important that he put it in the very first letter, is this: you do not have a time management problem. You have a self-ownership problem. Most people treat their time as a resource that gets allocated to whatever has the most immediate claim on it. The urgent email, the request that arrived this morning, the obligation that someone else's schedule created, the default of whatever habit fills the space when no deliberate choice has been made, and at the end of the day, they wonder where the hours went. Seneca wrote, Omnia Lucili aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything, Lucilius, belongs to others. Time alone is ours. The observation is precise and worth sitting with. Your money can be taken, your reputation can be damaged, your health can deteriorate, your plans can be disrupted by forces outside your control. But your time, specifically your time, is the one resource that is genuinely, irreducibly yours. The way you spend it is the way you spend yourself, and most people spend it as though it belonged to someone else. He continued, Ita fac mi Lucili vindicate tibi. Claim yourself for yourself. The word he used, vindica, is a legal term. It means to assert ownership, to reclaim what is rightfully yours. He was not suggesting a mild adjustment of priorities. He was suggesting a fundamental reorientation. Your hours belong to you, not to whoever makes the most immediate demand on them. Here is how this applies practically. The anxiety you feel about time is almost never anxiety about not having enough of it. It is anxiety about spending it on things that are not yours, obligations you accepted without choosing, demands you responded to without evaluating, hours that disappeared into the space between genuine priorities and the habits that fill the gaps. Seneca's prescription is not a productivity system. It is a question. Is this mine? Is this what I would choose to do with this hour if I were genuinely choosing? And if the answer is no, if the hour is being given to something that is not yours, that does not reflect your genuine values, that you would not choose in the absence of social pressure or habitual default, then the hour is being spent as though it belonged to someone else. Claim it back, not all at once, 1 hour at a time, starting with the next one. He also wrote something that people who are busy mistake for pessimism. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. The waste, he was careful to explain, does not happen in laziness. It happens in the wrong occupation, in spending hours on things that consume time without producing anything the person actually values. The practical question this produces: what are you doing that consumes your time without producing anything you actually value? Not what looks productive or sounds impressive or meets someone else's definition of useful. What actually matters to you, and is the time going there? Part 2. On anxiety. What Seneca understood that modern psychology confirmed. 2 millennia later. Seneca wrote an entire letter, Letter 5, about the relationship between anxiety and the imagination. And what he said is so precisely accurate that it reads like a description of what neuroscience has been discovering for the past 50 years. He wrote, "Plus semper tibi imaginatio quam res noquit." Your imagination has always harmed you more than reality has. This is not comfort. It is a clinical observation. Most of the suffering people carry around is not produced by actual events. It is produced by anticipated events, by the elaborate construction of futures that have not yet happened, by the detailed rehearsal of worst-case scenarios that may never arrive, by the mental simulation of difficulties that exist only in the mind that is generating them. The anxious person is almost never anxious about what is actually happening right now. They are anxious about what might happen, what could go wrong, what they might lose, how people might respond, what failure might look like. And all of this anxiety, this suffering generated from scenarios that do not exist, consumes real energy, real attention, and real time. Seneca's prescription was not to stop imagining. He was a writer. He valued the imagination highly. His prescription was to be precise about what you are imagining. When an anxious thought arrives, he suggested asking, is this something that is actually happening or something that might happen? And if it might happen, how likely is it? And if it does happen, is it as bad as the imagination is suggesting? He introduced a practice he called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of difficulties. Not to dwell in anxiety, but to examine feared outcomes clearly enough that the fear loses its power. Because most feared outcomes, when examined specifically and honestly, are either unlikely or survivable. The imagination, left unexamined, magnifies both probability and severity. The examined imagination produces something closer to accurate assessment. Here is the practical application. The next time anxiety arrives about work, about money, about a relationship, about the future in any of its forms, stop and ask Seneca's question. Is this actually happening, or am I suffering in advance of something that may not happen? If it is happening, address it. If it is not happening, examine it. What specifically am I afraid of? How likely is it? If it occurs, what would I actually do? Almost always, the examination reveals that the feared outcome is less probable and less catastrophic than the unexamined anxiety suggested. And almost always, identifying a specific response to the feared outcome, even a preliminary one, reduces the anxiety significantly. Because anxiety is partly the experience of being in danger without knowing what to do. Identify what you would do, and the danger loses some of its power. Part 3. On the fear of poverty and financial anxiety. One of the most practical and least discussed aspects of Seneca's letters is his treatment of financial anxiety. Seneca was extraordinarily wealthy, one of the richest men in Rome, and he wrote extensively about money, not from a position of indifference to it, but from the specific perspective of someone who had examined his own relationship with wealth carefully enough to identify where it was producing anxiety rather than freedom. He wrote, "Hoc primum philosophia promittit, sensum communem, humanitatem et congregationem." Philosophy promises this first: common sense, humanity, and fellowship. But the practical foundation of all of this, he argued, was the removal of financial anxiety, not through accumulating more, but through reducing dependency. His practice, which he described in several letters, was periodically to live as though he had very little, to eat simply, to dress without luxury, to experience voluntarily the conditions he feared. And what he consistently found was that the feared conditions were far less terrible than the fear of them had suggested. He wrote to Lucilius, "This is what I advise you to do. Set aside certain days on which you will be content with the smallest and cheapest food, with rough and coarse clothing, and say to yourself, 'Is this what I was afraid of?'" The practical insight is this: financial anxiety is almost always anxiety about a specific feared future, the loss of comfort, of status, of security. And that fear is almost always larger than the actual experience of the feared condition would be. The person who has never experienced genuine material simplicity imagines it as unbearable. The person who has experienced it voluntarily, as Seneca recommended, discovers that it is merely uncomfortable. And the discovery that the feared condition is survivable eliminates much of the power the fear held. This does not mean that financial security is unimportant. Seneca was not advocating for poverty. He was advocating for the specific freedom that comes from knowing, from direct experience, rather than assumption, that you can function, think clearly, and maintain your values in conditions more modest than your current ones. That freedom changes your relationship with money fundamentally. You pursue it from choice rather than from fear. And choice produces different decisions than fear does. Part 4. On focus and the distracted mind. Seneca wrote about distraction with a specificity that makes it clear he was dealing with the same fundamental problem even without smartphones. He wrote, "Nusquam est qui ubique est." The person who is everywhere is nowhere. The observation is about attention, not location. The person whose attention is perpetually divided, who is partially present in the task at hand and partially somewhere else, partially in the conversation and partially monitoring something else, partially doing what matters and partially managing what is merely urgent. That person is, in the most precise sense, nowhere. They are not fully present in any of the places their attention is distributed. The result is not just reduced productivity, it is the specific experience of a life that feels somehow unlived, as though the hours are passing, but you are not quite inside them, as though you are adjacent to your own experience rather than actually having it. Seneca's prescription for this was what he called the retreat into yourself. Not physical solitude, though he valued that. The capacity to be genuinely present in whatever you are doing, to give the task or the conversation or the moment your actual attention rather than the performance of attention. He wrote, "Recede in the ips, retreat into yourself." Not to isolate from the world, but to establish a stable interior from which you engage with the world, rather than being constantly swept by it, reactive to whatever arrives, carried from one demand to the next without ever quite choosing where you go. The practical application: identify the single most important thing you need to do today. Give it a period of genuine, undivided attention. phone elsewhere, notifications off, the other tasks acknowledged and set aside for the duration. Not forever, for a defined period of genuine presence. Seneca believed that the quality of the attention you bring to a task determines the quality of what the task produces and of the experience of doing it. The person who is half present gets half results and finds the work twice as exhausting as it needs to be. The person who is fully present produces better work with less effort and finds the work genuinely engaging rather than draining. The scattered mind is not just less productive, it is less alive, and the remedy Seneca offered is not complicated. It is the daily, deliberate practice of being actually present in what you are actually doing. Part 5. On other people's opinions. Seneca had a particular concern about the influence of the crowd, by which he meant not just public opinion, but the specific and pervasive tendency of people to let what others think govern choices that are genuinely their own. He wrote, "Recede into ipse quantum potes, cum his versare qui te meliorem acturi sunt, admitte quos de meliorem esse facturos." Retreat into yourself as much as possible. Associate with those who will make you better. Admit those who you can make better. The instruction contains an implicit rejection. Everyone else, the crowd whose opinions have no basis in genuine knowledge of your situation, whose approval you have been engineering your choices to secure, whose judgments you have been treating as verdicts, these are not people to optimize your behavior for. He was precise about why this matters practically. The person who lives for the crowd's approval cannot make genuine choices. Every decision is filtered through the anticipated response of people who are not in possession of the relevant information and who will not live with the consequences. The result is not a life that is actually yours. It is a life shaped by the lowest common denominator of what an imagined audience will approve. Seneca's alternative was not indifference to all external input. He valued genuine feedback from people who had earned the right to give it, people who knew him, who cared about his actual flourishing, who had demonstrated through their own lives that they had something worth taking seriously. But the crowd, the anonymous opinion of people who have seen a fragment of your life and formed a judgment, the social pressure of environments that reward performance over substance. These are not authorities worth optimizing for. His test, which he described in several letters, was simple. Live as though everything you do could be seen, but care only about the judgment of someone whose judgment you genuinely respect. Not everyone, someone specific, a person whose wisdom and integrity you actually value, and ask whether that person would approve of the choice you are making. Not the crowd, that specific, worthy individual. Most choices that survive this test are choices worth making. And most of the choices that fail it, the ones made to manage appearances rather than to express genuine values, become obviously not worth making once the relevant audience is specified correctly. Part 6. On friendship and genuine connection. Among Seneca's most beautiful letters are the ones about friendship, and what he wrote reveals something about connection that the modern emphasis on networking and social capital has largely lost. He wrote, "Hoc primum praesta ut sis qualis esse te velis cum habueris amicum." First, show yourself the kind of person you want as a friend. The instruction is entirely about character rather than strategy. Before worrying about who to cultivate as a friend, become the kind of person genuine friendship requires. Seneca distinguished between what he called friendships of utility, relationships maintained because of what each party can do for the other, and genuine friendship, which he described as the willingness to share everything. Not in the sense of disclosure, but in the sense of genuine mutual investment in each other's actual flourishing. He wrote to Lucilius about the danger of having many acquaintances and few friends, of spreading social investment across a wide surface rather than building genuine depth with a few. And what he said about this resonates with the specific loneliness that many people feel in the age of social media. The person with 500 connections and no one who genuinely knows them. The practical application is this: identify one relationship in your life that could go deeper, that you have been maintaining at the surface level because depth requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels risky. And invest in it, not through a grand gesture, but through the specific thing that genuine friendship requires: showing up, being honest, caring about the actual person rather than the version of them that is convenient for you. Seneca believed that the capacity for genuine friendship was among the most important things a person could develop, both for its own sake and because the person who has genuine friends is genuinely less vulnerable to the fear and anxiety that isolation amplifies. Closing 124 letters, a lifetime of honest reflection on the problems that make human life difficult. Written 2,000 years ago in Latin by a man living under constant threat in the court of a dangerous emperor, and still today addressing your problems with more precision than most of what was written about them last week. This is what Seneca actually said. About time, claim it back, it is yours. About anxiety, you are suffering in advance of things that may not happen. Examine the fear. About money, practice needing less so that the fear of needing less loses its power. About focus, be where you are. Give it your actual attention. About other people's opinions, optimize for the judgment of someone genuinely worth impressing. About friendship, become the kind of person genuine friendship requires. None of this is complicated, all of it is demanding, because it requires the one thing that most personal development content carefully avoids requiring: that you actually change something, not that you understand something, not that you feel inspired. That you change a specific behavior in a specific way, starting with the next hour. Seneca would accept nothing less. He was not writing to be understood. He was writing to be used. Use him. Stay stoic. Part 7. On anger, Seneca's most practical teaching. Seneca wrote an entire book about anger, de ira, and the specific insights it contains are among the most practically useful things he ever produced. His central observation: anger is the emotion that most convincingly disguises itself as justified. When you are angry, you feel right. You feel that the anger is a proportionate response to a genuine wrong. You feel that expressing it is honest and that suppressing it would be dishonest. Seneca's counter-argument was not that anger is always unjust. Sometimes the underlying grievance is entirely legitimate. His counter-argument was that the angry response almost never produces what the person wants, and almost always produces something worse than if they had waited. He wrote, "Maximum remedium irae mora est." The greatest remedy for anger is delay, not suppression, delay. The specific instruction was to insert time between the stimulus and the response, not to pretend the feeling does not exist, to refuse to let the feeling issue immediate instructions. His reasoning was precise. In the moment of anger, you are operating with distorted information. The emotional state is magnifying the offense, minimizing any context that would justify it, and generating responses calibrated to the severity of the distorted perception rather than to the actual situation. The response produced in this state will almost always overshoot. It will wound more than the situation warranted. It will say things that cannot be unsaid. It will create secondary problems that are worse than the original one. The delay allows the emotional intensity to reduce enough for accurate assessment to become possible. What was the actual offense? How significant is it? What response would genuinely serve your interests and your values? These questions cannot be answered accurately in the heat of the moment. They can be answered accurately after the moment has passed. His practical instruction: when you feel anger rising, commit to not responding for a specific period. Not indefinitely, but long enough for the first wave to pass. He suggested different durations depending on the severity of the provocation. Minor irritations, moments, significant provocations, hours, major conflicts, at least a day. In the time after the delay, most of the responses that felt urgent no longer feel necessary. And the ones that still feel necessary are expressed with the precision that genuine communication requires, rather than the force that anger produces. This is among the most immediately applicable of all Seneca's teachings. The next time you feel the impulse to respond in anger, to send the email, to say the thing, to fire back immediately, delay. Not because the grievance is not real, because the response produced by anger almost never serves you as well as the response produced by clarity. Part 8. On Death and Living Fully. Seneca returned to death throughout his letters, not with morbidity, but with the specific urgency of someone who took seriously the fact that his time was finite. He wrote, "Cogita quantum temporis absumpserit." Think how much time has been consumed, not to produce guilt about the past, but to produce precision about what remains. Because the person who genuinely feels the passage of time, who has allowed the reality of mortality to become felt rather than merely acknowledged, makes different choices about the hours that remain. His approach to death was practical. Dum differtur vita transcurrit. While we delay, life passes. The delay he was describing was not procrastination in the conventional sense. It was the deeper postponement of genuine living, of the choices that would actually express your values, of the relationship between what you believe matters and how you actually spend your time. He described the common pattern with uncomfortable accuracy. People spend their youth acquiring the means to enjoy life. In middle age, they use those means in service of more acquisition. In old age, they realize that the enjoyment they were preparing for has not arrived, that the life they were going to live was being perpetually deferred to a more convenient future. His prescription was not to abandon planning or to live without regard for the future. It was to live now, within whatever constraints the present actually contains, rather than in the imagined future where conditions will finally be right. The letter most often quoted on this theme begins, "Ita fac mi Lucili, vindicate tibi," claim yourself for yourself. And what he meant by this, unpacked across the subsequent letters, was something more demanding than it first appears. Claiming yourself for yourself means living your own life, making choices that reflect your genuine values rather than external expectations, spending time on what actually matters to you rather than on what consumes it by default, being genuinely present in the hours you are actually living rather than perpetually preparing for a future that keeps receding. 2,000 years later, the instruction is unchanged, because the tendency it is correcting is unchanged. Claim yourself, now, not when conditions improve, in the conditions you have. That is the final lesson of the letters, not a philosophical position, an instruction, one that Seneca himself followed, writing until the very end, thinking carefully, living deliberately, even as the threat of his own death was no longer hypothetical, but imminent. He faced it with the equanimity he had spent his life building, not because he was indifferent to life, because he had actually lived it, and the person who has genuinely lived their life does not face its ending with the same terror as the person who has been perpetually deferring the living. Live now. That is what Seneca wrote 2,000 years ago for you.